The seven seals of Revelation. What happens when the seventh seal is broken by this angel? Have you ever held something so precious that your hands trembled at the very thought of opening it? Maybe it was a letter from someone you loved, or perhaps the results of a test that would change your life forever. Your heart pounds, your breath catches, and in that moment, you realize that once you break that seal, once you open that door, there's no going back. Everything changes. This is exactly what happens in the book of Revelation when we witness the breaking of the seven seals. But this isn't just an ancient story written on dusty scrolls. This is your story. This is my story. This is the story of every human soul that has ever wondered what lies beyond the veil of this life. I remember the night I first truly understood what these seals meant. I was sitting in my car after one of the hardest days of my life. I'd lost my job, my relationship was falling apart, and honestly, I felt like God had forgotten my name. The radio was playing softly, and a preacher was talking about Revelation. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'd always been intimidated by that book. All those strange creatures and mysterious symbols. But that night, something clicked. The preacher said something that stopped me cold. The seals aren't just about the end of the world. They're about the end of your world as you know it, so something beautiful can be born. In that broken-down car, with tears streaming down my face, I realized I was living through my own breaking of seals. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't something to fear. The nature of divine mysteries. Before we dive into each seal, let's talk about what we're really dealing with here. The book of Revelation isn't meant to scare you into submission. It's meant to reveal something magnificent about the nature of God, the journey of the soul, and the ultimate triumph of love over everything that tries to destroy it. Think about it this way: when a butterfly is ready to emerge from its cocoon, that cocoon has to break completely. From the outside it looks like destruction. But from heaven's perspective, it's the most beautiful birth imaginable. That's what the seven seals represent. Not destruction for destruction's sake, but the breaking open of everything that keeps us from becoming who we're truly meant to be. The first seal, the white horse of conquest. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Revelation 6 verses 1-2. The first seal breaks, and out rides a figure on a white horse. Now, many people see this and immediately think of Jesus because elsewhere in Revelation, Christ rides a white horse. But look closer. This rider carries a bow with no arrows mentioned. He's given a crown, not earning it through sacrifice like Christ did. This is conquest without true victory, power without love. I've seen this rider gallop through my own life more times than I care to admit. He shows up every time I try to control outcomes instead of trusting the process. Every time I chase success without checking my heart. Every time I want to win an argument more than I want to love the person I'm arguing with. This rider represents that part of human nature that wants to conquer and control everything around us. He's the voice that whispers, "You need to be in charge. You need to have all the answers. You need to prove you're right." But here's the thing about conquest without love. It always leaves you empty even when you win. The emotional weight of this seal is the recognition of our own desire for control. It's that moment when you realize you've been trying to be the general of your own life, when maybe you were meant to be the student. The breaking of this seal forces us to confront the question, are we conquering for love or are we conquering for ego? The second seal, the red horse of war. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. Revelation 6 verses 3-4. Peace is taken from the earth. Not temporarily disturbed, but actively removed. The red horse charges forth, and suddenly brother turns against brother, friend becomes foe, and love turns into conflict. You know this horse, don't you? You've seen it gallop through your family dinners when politics come up. You've felt its hooves thunder through your heart when someone you trusted betrayed you. You've watched it tear through communities when prejudice raises its ugly head. But here's what breaks my heart about the second seal. It's not really about external war. It's about the war that rages inside each of us. It's about the battle between who we are and who we pretend to be. It's about the conflict between our wounded hearts and our desire to love freely. I think about Sarah, a woman in our community who couldn't speak to her own sister for 15 years because of something that happened at their mother's funeral. 15 years of Christmases without hugs, 15 years of grandchildren who didn't know their aunt, 15 years of a war that nobody even remembered how to end. That's the red horse in action. The emotional truth of this seal is that sometimes love has to get messy before it gets beautiful. Sometimes we have to face the wars in our own hearts before we can be peacemakers in the world. The breaking of this seal asks us, what battles are you fighting that God never called you to fight? The third seal, the black horse of famine. When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. Revelation 6 verses 5-6. The black horse brings scarcity. But notice something interesting, it's not complete starvation. There's still wheat and barley, but you have to work all day just to afford enough food to survive. The oil and wine, the luxuries, those remain untouched. This is about the growing gap between those who have and those who have not. This seal hits different when you've ever had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. When you've ever looked at your children and wondered how you were going to provide for them. When you've ever felt like no matter how hard you work, you're always one step behind. But the famine of the third seal isn't just about physical hunger. It's about spiritual starvation in a world of abundance. We live in a time when we have access to more information, more entertainment, more connection than any generation in history. Yet depression rates soar. Anxiety cripples millions. People are starving for meaning while drowning in distractions. The writer holds scales because this seal is about balance. The terrible imbalance that happens when we feed everything except our souls. We feast on social media but starve for real conversation. We binge on entertainment but hunger for purpose. We consume endless content but thirst for authentic connection. I remember talking to Marcus, a successful businessman who had everything the world said would make him happy. 3 cars, a house on the lake, a corner office with a view. But he told me, "Pastor, I wake up every morning feeling empty. I'm dying of thirst in the middle of an ocean." That's the black horse of famine. Abundance that doesn't nourish, prosperity that doesn't prosper the soul. The breaking of this seal challenges us to examine what we're really hungry for. Are we filling up on things that leave us empty? Are we so busy earning a living that we've forgotten how to live? The fourth seal, the pale horse of death. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. Revelation 6 verses 7-8. Death rides in not on a black horse as we might expect, but on a pale one. The Greek word here is chloros, the color of sickness, of things dying, of life slowly draining away. This isn't the quick death of battle. This is the slow fade of hope. Every person listening to this has felt the pale horse's breath on their neck. Maybe it was watching a loved one slip away in a hospital bed. Maybe it was the death of a dream you'd carried for years. Maybe it was the day you looked in the mirror and realized you weren't the same person you used to be, and that person wasn't coming back. But here's what most people miss about the fourth seal. Death has a companion. Hades follows behind, which in the original language means the unseen realm, the place of shadows and questions. This isn't just about physical death, it's about all the little deaths we experience in life. The death of innocence when we realize the world isn't as safe as we thought. The death of certainty when our faith gets shaken. The death of relationships that we thought would last forever. I'll never forget Jennifer, a young mother who lost her baby at birth. She told me, "Pastor, I didn't just lose my child. I lost my future. I lost every Christmas morning I'd imagined, every first day of school, every wedding dance. A whole life died that never got to live." That's the pale horse of death. It takes more than just life. It takes the life we thought we were going to have. But here's the hope hidden in this horror. Death can only touch a fourth of the earth. 3/4 remain untouchable by death's power. Even in the face of our deepest losses, there's something eternal in us that death cannot claim. There's something in the human spirit that refuses to be extinguished. The emotional weight of this seal is the recognition that death is not the end of the story. It's a terrible chapter, but it's not the final word. The breaking of this seal forces us to confront our deepest fears about mortality and meaning, but it also reveals that even death serves a purpose in God's ultimate plan of redemption. The fifth seal, the cry of the martyrs. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Then each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to wait a little longer, until the full number of their fellow servants, their brothers and sisters, were killed just as they had been. Revelation 6 verses 9 to 11. The fifth seal is different. No horse comes charging out. Instead, we hear voices, the voices of those who died because they wouldn't compromise their faith. They're under the altar, which tells us something beautiful. Their sacrifice wasn't wasted. It became the foundation upon which God's justice stands. But listen to their cry, "How long?" These aren't perfect, patient saints sitting quietly in heaven. These are real people with real emotions who are asking the question that every person of faith has asked at some point. God, if you're really in control, why does evil seem to win so often? This seal isn't just about ancient martyrs. It's about everyone who has ever paid a price for standing up for what's right. The teacher who got fired for refusing to pass students who didn't do the work. The businessman who lost contracts because he wouldn't lie on his taxes. The teenager who got mocked for not going along with the crowd. It's about Maria, who cleaned offices at night to put her kids through college, and never once complained when others looked down on her work. She wore those white robes of dignity every single day, even when the world couldn't see them. The cry, "How long?" echoes through every emergency room where parents wait for news about their child. It resonates in every courtroom where victims hope for justice. It rises from every heart that has ever wondered if God really sees the pain of the innocent. But notice what happens next. They're given white robes and told to wait a little longer. This is God saying, "I see you. I haven't forgotten. Your pain matters. Your sacrifice counts. And there's a reason for the waiting that you can't see yet, but I can." The breaking of this seal confronts us with the hardest question of faith. Will we trust God's timing even when we don't understand it? Will we keep believing in justice even when it seems delayed? Will we maintain hope even when the waiting stretches longer than our hearts can bear? The sixth seal, cosmic upheaval. I watched as he opened the sixth seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair, the whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to earth, as figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by a strong wind. The heavens receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Revelation 6 verses 12 to 14. The sixth seal breaks, and suddenly everything we thought was permanent starts shaking. The sun goes dark, the moon turns red, the stars fall like overripe fruit, and the very foundations of reality begin to tremble. This isn't just cosmic special effects. This is about those moments in life when everything you've built your sense of security on suddenly shifts. The job you thought was secure disappears overnight. The marriage you thought was solid crumbles without warning. The health you took for granted fails you. The world you understood no longer makes sense. I remember when my own sixth seal moment came. I was a young pastor, confident in my theology, sure about how God worked. Then my first child was born with severe disabilities, and suddenly all my neat little sermons about God's goodness felt hollow. The sun of my certainty went dark. The moon of my faith turned blood red. All the stars of my theological understanding fell from the sky. But here's what I learned in that cosmic shaking. Sometimes God has to shake everything that can be shaken so that we can discover what cannot be shaken. Sometimes the mountains of our pride and the islands of our self-sufficiency have to be moved so that we can find the solid ground of God's unchanging love. The people in John's vision try to hide in caves and under rocks, crying out to the mountains, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb." They're terrified because they suddenly realize that everything they trusted in, political power, military might, social status, even the laws of nature themselves, can be shaken. But here's the beautiful irony. They're running from the Lamb, not a lion. They're fleeing from the gentlest symbol in all of Scripture. The very one they're afraid of is the one who gave his life to save them. Sometimes our greatest fear is facing the love we think we don't deserve. The emotional truth of the sixth seal is that spiritual earthquakes often precede spiritual breakthroughs. When everything in your external world is shaking, it's often because something unshakable is trying to be born in your internal world. The seventh seal, the silence that speaks volumes. When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Revelation 8 verse 1. After all the thunder and lightning, after all the horses and riders, after all the cosmic upheaval and crying out, we come to the seventh seal. And what do we find? Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Half an hour doesn't sound like long until you're sitting in perfect silence. Try it sometime. Set a timer for 30 minutes, sit completely still and don't make a sound. Those minutes will feel like hours. Your thoughts will race. Your heart will pound so loud you'll swear others can hear it. The silence becomes deafening. But this isn't the silence of absence. This is the silence of anticipation. This is the pause before the symphony begins. This is the deep breath before the miracle. This is the silence that speaks louder than all the noise that came before it. I think about the silence in the delivery room after a difficult birth, when everyone holds their breath waiting for that first cry. I think about the silence in the courtroom before the verdict is read. I think about the silence between lightning and thunder, when you know the storm is right on top of you. But most of all, I think about the silence of holy moments. The silence when you're standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and words fail you. The silence when you hold your child for the first time and nothing needs to be said. The silence when you kneel in prayer and finally stop talking long enough to listen. In Jewish tradition, there's a concept called the still small voice, the voice of God that can only be heard in absolute silence. When all the drama of the first 6 seals has played out, when all the noise of our human anxiety has exhausted itself, then comes the silence that makes room for God to speak. The 7th seal isn't about the end of the world. It's about the end of our need to fill every moment with noise and activity and worry. It's about learning to rest in the silence of God's presence. It's about discovering that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is nothing at all. The angel and the 7th seal. Now, who is this angel that breaks the 7th seal? The text tells us it's the Lamb, Jesus himself. But why is Jesus described as both a lamb and a lion, both the sacrifice and the one who opens the seals of judgment? Because Jesus is the only one who has the right to break these seals. He's walked through every one of them himself. He faced conquest and chose surrender. He experienced conflict and chose peace. He knew hunger and thirst and chose to feed others. He stared death in the face and chose to die for love. He cried out in his own pain and chose forgiveness. He felt the ground shake beneath him on the cross and chose to remain faithful. The angel who breaks the 7th seal is the one who has earned the right to reveal these mysteries because he's lived them. Every seal that breaks in your life, Jesus has already broken in his. Every horse that rides through your story, he's already faced down. Every silence that frightens you, he's already filled with his presence. As we journey through these 7 seals, we're not just reading ancient prophecy. We're walking through the stages of spiritual awakening. Each seal represents a part of the human experience that must be broken open before we can truly be free. The first seal breaks our illusion of control. The second breaks our false peace. The third breaks our spiritual complacency. The fourth breaks our denial of mortality. The fifth breaks our silence in the face of injustice. The sixth breaks our false securities. And the seventh breaks our need to fill the silence with anything other than God's presence. This is the emotional journey of every soul that has ever sought to know God deeply. It's not a comfortable journey. Nobody signs up for the breaking of seals. But it's the only way to move from religion to relationship, from knowledge to wisdom, from fear to faith. Here's what I've learned about the 7 seals in my own life. They're not just about future events. They're about present transformation. Every person who chooses to follow God will experience their own version of these seals being broken. The white horse of conquest might show up as your need to always be right in arguments with your spouse. The red horse of war might gallop through your relationships when pride refuses to apologize. The black horse of famine might visit when you're so busy climbing the ladder of success that you starve your own soul. The pale horse of death might come when dreams you've carried for years finally have to be laid to rest. The cry of the martyrs might echo in your heart when you wonder if your sacrifices are worth it. The cosmic shaking might happen when everything you've built your life on suddenly seems uncertain. And then comes the silence. That holy moment when you finally stop running, stop fighting, stop trying to figure everything out, and just rest in the presence of the one who loves you more than you can imagine. So what does it mean to live in the light of the 7th seal? It means learning to embrace the silence instead of fearing it. It means understanding that sometimes God's greatest work in our lives happens not in the dramatic moments, but in the quiet ones. It means recognizing that every broken seal in your life is actually an open door. Every ending is actually a beginning. Every death is actually a resurrection waiting to happen. It means trusting that the angel who breaks these seals in your life is not your enemy but your greatest friend. The one who allows difficulty into your life is the same one who died to ensure it won't have the final word. As we conclude this journey through the 7 seals, I want to ask you something. What seals is God trying to break in your life right now? What are you holding on to so tightly that God has to pry your fingers open to free you? Maybe it's the seal of unforgiveness that's keeping you bound to past hurts. Maybe it's the seal of pride that won't let you admit when you're wrong. Maybe it's the seal of fear that keeps you from stepping into the purpose God has for you. Here's the beautiful truth. The angel who breaks these seals doesn't do it to harm you. He does it to heal you. He doesn't break your heart to punish you. He breaks it open so more love can get in. The 7 seals of Revelation aren't a prophecy to fear. They're a love letter to hope. They're God's way of saying, I'm not going to let you stay stuck in anything that keeps you from becoming everything I created you to be. As we sit in the silence of the 7th seal, I want you to listen. Not with your ears, but with your heart. Can you hear it? Can you hear the sound of seals breaking? Can you hear the sound of old things passing away? Can you hear the sound of new things being born? In this silence, there's no need to perform. No need to pretend. No need to have all the answers. There's just you and the God who loves you enough to break every seal that keeps you from experiencing that love fully. This is the silence where healing happens. This is the silence where hope is reborn. This is the silence where heaven touches earth and everything changes. The 7th seal isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter written not in fear but in faith, not in judgment but in mercy, not in condemnation but in love. So as you leave this place, carry the silence with you. When the world gets noisy and chaotic, remember the 7th seal. When life feels overwhelming and out of control, remember that there's an angel who has already broken every seal you'll ever face, and he did it out of love. The 7 seals of Revelation aren't just about what's coming. They're about what's here right now, God's relentless, unstoppable, seal-breaking love that refuses to let you stay the same. In the silence of the 7th seal, we find not the end of the world, but the beginning of a new one. Not the judgment of God, but the embrace of God. Not the reason to fear, but the reason to hope. And in that silence, if you listen closely, you can hear the sound of heaven whispering your name, calling you home to the love you've always been searching for. May the breaking of every seal in your life lead you not to fear, but to faith. Not to despair, but to hope. Not to isolation, but to the silence where God's love speaks loudest of all.